have to run background checks on their during their programs so that they can do clinicals, things like that. And we learned a lot of really valuable information that Scott's going to go over with you today. A lot of it has to do with, not every background check is the same. And I'm going to turn it over to Scott so he can kind of run this for you guys.
Well, how is everybody today? Am I working?
I think you're good. I think everybody's mostly muted.
Okay, there we go. Get them in there. Let me get this training deal up. If I is this were you wanting to do an outline or just me go over kind of the stuff on the McGirt? Which we go looks like everybody is muted.
It's really up to you. I feel like you have a lot of really valuable information. So whatever you feel is more pertinent to our instructors that do have to do, background checks for their students whenever they go to clinicals and things like that. And I will encourage anybody that's on here, you guys can, share your questions in the chat box or, unmute yourself because I feel like Scott's pretty laid back. He'll be more than happy to answer questions as they come up.
Okay, well, I'm obviously you guys, you're in need to run it to follow to stay in. You run background checks to stay consistent with the board of nursing. Outside of nursing, several employers, they run it for safety precautions, if you will. They're there to protect the other employers. Background checks have been, kind of over the years have been increasing in their difficulties to do things, but I kind of wanted the whole presentation that we did this summer was kind of about the McGirt versus Oklahoma thing. If anyone's familiar with that, basically what it is in July 9th of 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of Jim C. McGirt, and it basically took jurisdictional rights from local police officers, local prosecutors to prosecute tribal members on tribal land. Well, if you're not familiar, there's 2/3 of Oklahoma is tribal land. So I'm a retired Tulsa police officer. So I'll give you an example of how that worked. If I was to witness you committing a crime on the street, I can detain you. If I find out you're a tribal member, I can't arrest you. I don't have the authority. Now I can detain you for the BIA officers or something like that. Tulsa County prosecutors, they can't even prosecute you. They don't have the jurisdiction to do it. So everything has to go through tribal court. Okay, so there's actually 6 tribes that are involved in this McGirt ruling. It originally started with 5 tribes, and then the Quapaw tribe filed a separate suit, kind of became a part of it. So how does that affect you guys? Well, when you run that background check, first and foremost, to have an accurate background check, there's a few things you have to do. One is you have to check every court of jurisdiction, okay? Not just this tribal court that we're talking about. Example of that would be most of you that I've seen, and we've actually signed up several of the different schools just based off what they're running. It showed some holes in the system, but most of them are running what we call a national criminal background check, which typically consists of the national database search, a national sex offender registry search, and a social security search. That's kind of the start of a background. What most people do not know is that background check only covers the municipal and state level charges. It does not cover any federal courts. And federal courts are not new. They've been around forever. Most of your bigger cases and your in-depth cases are filed in federal court. Another example of that would be same scenario. I'm the Tulsa police officer. I witness you commit a crime. And let's say it's guns and drugs. It's a big crime. Even though I file that, I arrest you and our local prosecutors are wanting to file that in state court. If the federal prosecutors pick it up and they say, hey, we want to file it, then it goes to federal court. You will not find that record at all on your national criminal database search. So you actually have to run a separate search to get federal courts. Well, now throw in the July 20th Supreme Court. Now you have to run in Oklahoma. We now have a separate court. So we have 4 courts of jurisdiction in Oklahoma. So now we have to run all those separately. And unfortunately, with the tribes, it's all manual. We have to go to each tribe manually, and some of them we can get up to a year back, but in order to do a 7-year scope type search, we may have to even call them, and it's a little bit more in depth what it has to do, but the importance outweighs the work, because in 2022, you know, when this took place, the tribes openly admitted, hey, we weren't ready for this. We didn't expect this. So they don't have a lot of laws on their books. They don't have all the prosecutors they need. They didn't have anything ready either. Well, now that's grown. They've got the prosecutors in place. They've all have, they've built courts. They've even added new laws to their books. So in 2022, there was approximately 15,000 criminal records filed through tribal courts. Okay, so, and they're expecting that to grow substantially over the years. I kind of, look at it and say, as a person that runs background checks, as time goes on from that, when it was initiated, it's going to be more and more records in that system that's tribal, that goes through the process. So when that happens, that just means it's that much more important to run, because you could have a lot of crimes that occur just in the Tulsa County, which is the Cherokee Nation, that doesn't show up on your national database. And the objective is, we want your guys' background checks to mirror the one of the Oklahoma Board of Nursing. Okay, so that's where all this kind of takes place. Without it, you're just, and the sad thing is, when I spoke in front of the Tulsa deans and directors of nursing, matter of fact, I think that was the first one I spoke on of the year. And when I was looking at it, and I kind of researched my clients that were going to be there, or the participants are going to be there, and I pulled up OUs, on their website, they kind of outlined their background check of what they had to do. I was a little shocked. I was a little taken back. They're not even running federal report at all, and federal's been around forever. They're running a very basic background check that's not even close to the one that the Board of Nursing runs. So I was very curious of why, and that's kind of how I started dabbling in with the nursing programs, and met Laura through there, and the different ones is, I didn't, because it's available, it's out there, it's available, and it's pretty much the same as what, they're paying now. It's just the difference of doing it. Do we have any questions so far on this?
I have one, Scott. So you're saying that when you say tribal courts, I know in Oklahoma we have a large number of tribes. And then there are nationwide exponentially more tribes. When
Right.
you say tribal, does if they're not a tribal citizen, then could they have pending action in a tribal court?
Well, technically, yes. So there is a ton of tribes across the nation. Only Oklahoma is recognized as part of the McGirt, though. Only the 6 tribes. Now, my guess is that other tribes are going to read their original treaties and what they read, and maybe file suit too. But, funny, we did a statistical deal for the presentation. Prior to the McGirt ruling, there would only be between the tribes typically close to 100, criminal charges filed in tribal court prior to McGirt. That's those 6 tribes. So they weren't really prosecuted in that way. And they didn't have a lot of police, the light horsemen, the BIA, they spent most of their time doing casino stuff, opposed to policing and patrolling. And I mean, I know like Sac and Fox, and a lot of them have police officers that do their what they call the reservation area and stuff like that, but there still wasn't a lot of charges filed in those courts. So as you can tell, in or 2 years time, they've grown crazy how much they are. Now, I kind of agree with you. I think that other tribes across the country are going to be reviewing their early treaties, and because if you look at it as far as a business standpoint, not only does it, well, first of all, it gives them their sovereignty, which is very important, but also it's makes money. I mean, you got fines coming in, fees coming in, court fee, so it's a business. So as well. So, I think it's only going to grow. I think it all depends on how their initial treaty, because this treaty was from 1855, if that tells you anything. That's the one that the wording basically told them that they could police themselves unless it was one of what we call the major crimes. So there's a deal called the Major Crimes Act of 1855, and it originally had stuff like murder, rape, burglary, larceny, the bigger crimes, and they've added to it since. So there's 10, 15 different crimes that they can technically file in federal court. So on those crimes, it's just the discretion of the court. If the feds say, I'm going to pick it up, then they're going to file it in federal court, and we'll find it to the federal criminal search. If they say go ahead, then we'll find it in tribal court. So it just depends on kind of the same way they do the state level courts.
So typically, so if someone committed murder and it was on tribal land, it doesn't necessarily have to be tried on, or it may or may not be tried on through tribal courts, correct?
Yes, the federal government is the deciding factor. They get to, I call it cherry picking, right? I would say a murder would probably going to go federal, unless it's just something that they're trying to file under maybe circumstantial type evidence, and it's not, because I can tell you just from past experience being a law enforcement, the federal prosecutors, they really hand choose their cases. They don't like to lose too many of them, so they pick the ones that are kind of the sure kind of thing. So I would say, unless it's just something that's very unclear and circumstantial, that they're going to file it in federal court on a murder charge.
Okay.
But then again, you never
But
know.
the things that concern us too are abuse. Not that murder wouldn't concern us, but I'm just saying that a lot of the things that we find in healthcare have to do with drug-related charges or abuse and neglect. Those would be some of the things that would be very common that might show up for healthcare.
Yeah, correct. 100%. You don't want someone that has a history of domestic disputes or some sort of violence, even in your program, let alone doing clinicals at the hospital, because in the program, I've been to things where the slightest thing set somebody off and it ended up into, a rage or something, so, yeah, I believe screening is very important in every kind of industry, in every school, everything, and it needs to be proper. I'm kind of, I've become the black sheep on LinkedIn a little bit. I believe in the accuracy side of things. There's a big conflict, speed over accuracy. Even though the background checks are fast if you do them properly, a lot of people are using automated type stuff that gives it right in their hands right then. The problem with that is it's very, very inaccurate. So, I've been posting things about, your background check company needs to be in communication with you, because Laura, your background check is going to be different and Gil is going to be different in mine. It's really dependent upon where you've lived over the last 7 or 8 years. A good example that people don't know is, let's say I just moved to Tulsa from Colorado and I'm applying for nursing school here. You run your national criminal search through, some of the vendors that's out there, and you get it back and it shows that I'm clear. What vendors aren't telling the clients and stuff is that not everything, just because it says it's a national criminal, it's kind of the false sense of security. The state of Colorado and the state of North Carolina have state laws in place where they don't allow their criminal records to be reported to the national databases. You have to run a separate search in those states or you get no information. But they don't tell you that. They don't screen to see where that person's lived, and they haven't done that kind of stuff. So it's come back. So that's kind of the, the importance of it. Plus, if you guys have ever, been on Google and search something, which most of us have, right? That's kind of what a database is. It sends out scrapers to these sites that they're attached to pick up information. But what if that site is down at the moment for an update? They don't come back and tell you that, hey, that site's down, so we didn't give you this record. So you really never know. And they're, because of their inaccuracy, are you guys familiar with what the Fair Credit Reporting Act is? Most of it's the guidelines that we have to follow as background check people, as well as your HR staff. These searches are so inaccurate that they have a federal regulation in place that says that anything found through a database search has to be verified first before we're allowed to report it. Now, then it gets into how to verify, which there's some, ambiguity in that as well. But that's the difference. We want to see you guys checking all the tribal courts, making sure that your background check mirrors that of the Board of Nursing. And so that's what we're trying to get everybody to see and understand. And that's kind of the, this tribal court, nobody knows of. I mean, everyone's heard of McGirt, but they didn't realize how the complexity of McGirt is and the different areas that it affects. And me being in backgrounds, obviously I've become very familiar with it. So
does the same thing, you mentioned the Board of Nursing, curious about like the Oklahoma Board of Medical Licensure, and that's one of the issues in healthcare too, is we're not just one thing that's out there looking for information to report to. On some, I would guess it has to do with their registration or their licensure in the state. A registry. Sometimes, like rad techs have a registry as opposed to does that make sense?
right.
As opposed to a board that reviews. It's still the same thing.
Now,
but
does Rad Tech have to do that OK screen? Is that the background check that they do?
I don't know what
Yeah.
they do. That's
So
what I'm saying. There's so many different professions too that we work with besides just nursing. And nursing, you said, the Board of Nursing does look at all the tribes.
no, well, so any of the entities that require a fingerprint background check, right? Okay, so in the future, that's going to be all there is. It's going to be, in our industry, we see now that all the big players are buying up these biometric companies. So it's going to be, who knows, we're going to be doing a retinal scan on background checks before long or something. But so the Board of Nursing does it through the fingerprint software. So the way that works is they use what is called a channeling agent that sends it directly to the OSBI. So the fingerprints are ran through the OSBI, which is only state level charges. Same thing as the database search. It's only Oklahoma, it's only state municipal charges. Then it's sent to the actual FBI. And FBI will include the tribal courts as far as the fingerprint side of it. So yes, the Board of Nursing running the fingerprint scan is going to capture that in the long run. Obviously, as a school, I actually received this question. What benefit is us to run a complete background check like that? We don't have to worry about them getting out there because the Board of Nursing will stop it and they won't be able to work in the industry anyway. And my deal was what I said a minute ago. Well, the safety of your students, and then while they're at clinicals, you're going to be somewhat liable as well. So, and they didn't even think of that. And they're like, wow, I never thought of that. But, I look at it more from that standpoint, the safety of the schools and the other people in there. But it is a progressing thing that's going to get harder and harder. There's take like nursing homes and stuff like that in Oklahoma. They have a process called OK screen. It eventually gets to the fingerprints, but you go through a weird process. They check OSCN, ODCR, DOC.gov, stuff like that at first. And if you pass that quote pre-screen, then they go, to the fingerprint side of it. So I guess it's good. It's time consuming. I know that. We could be an actual we're allowed to be a third party that runs them and does that, but it's just not beneficial for the client to pay someone else to do what they can do like that. So it's not that hard. So we never did do it. But any other questions right now? Or? Well, this will go quick with just a few there. Let's see here. I mean, if I can, what are you guys doing now? The ones we got here. What are we currently doing on their backgrounds?
So Christy, what do you guys do at Western Tech? Oh, we can't hear you.
Oh, she muted.
We're using Castle Branch.
Okay, yeah, several of them are. So you're getting the national criminal,
Yes.
national sex offender, and social trace. So see,
Yes.
that's one of those examples. You're technically missing the federal courts and you're missing the
Yeah.
tribal courts.
Yes.
But again, I don't know. I know who Castle Branch is. They do a lot of nursing. I don't know what their procedure is, but I do know the database is what they are. Here's an example of things that happen with the database.
Okay.
Since October 19th, the state of Kansas was basically hacked and none of the background checks worked through the database in Kansas.
Okay.
Nobody's telling their clients that. We posted it not only on our homepage, but that's what got me the black sheep originally, Laura. I posted it on LinkedIn and said, hey, make sure this is happening. This is down. This is, if you're not running something different or you don't have a alternative in place, especially for the Kansas employers, right? Then you're missing that record. Where in your case, you be in Oklahoma, if you had a student that moved in, you're missing that record. So it's in your best interest, as whether you're an employer or school or anybody, they need to be in constant contact because the background checks do vary. They vary from you to me to whoever. It's based on where you've lived, basically. So, not saying anything bad about that company. A lot of companies just sell that. That's all they sell. It's so they can, it's about volume. It's about don't have to touch the record. But so just talking about them, that's you're missing two different courts of jurisdiction, and my guess you're depending on where your students have lived, you're probably missing some stuff there as well.
Mhm.
I do know that we went to OSU IT last week and did their drug testing because we do the on-site drug testing for them. They bring them all in, and when the assistant there comes up and she's talking to us, and she goes, I have to admit, she goes, I've seen more records in these 2 semesters than I have the last 4 years. So, I mean, it's just a difference of the record, and you will see stuff. And it may be something that's very minor that you don't, you're not going to exclude the applicant for that, but it's still there and it's full transparency where you could see it and you can make an informed decision whether or not you want them in your school, basically.
Well, Scott, we're also, what our practical nursing director said, and this is consistent. I think Gilda and Susie both can agree when we go out and talk to our schools that we're having trouble with qualified applicants to begin with. So our pool isn't that great
narrowing
sometimes to begin with. And then, like you said, she's seeing people that have more active activity on their background check. And
Right.
so I think it's just, it's like a perfect storm.
Yeah. We're seeing the same thing with, on the drug testing side with you guys are a little different, obviously, but for employers, we got a lot of employers declining to run, THC as a drug test. They can't find people to work. So they're changing from a 10 panel to a 9 panel or from a 5 panel to a 4 panel, and they're just, they're finding that that happens a lot and we're finding that we're out and about quite a bit doing like a post-accident test on people quite a bit now too.
So you're saying after an incident, maybe
Yes.
in a facility of some kind or a business?
Yep.
Okay. So
Yeah, we're
Deborah
getting-
says that she's using the $19 OSBI background check.
Yeah, that's again, that's state and municipal background checks only. Also be careful on the OSBI. OSBI reports arrest records too. So we don't report arrest records just because they're not convicted. And we have
Right.
several employers that's made hiring decisions based on arrest records, and they have to kind of go back and say, whoops, our fault, because it's not a conviction. So whereas technically you can use arrest records, it is not recommended across the board. It leaves too much area for discretion and discrimination type behavior. But I mean, we have several that run the OSBI on top of our report even. Matter of fact, I believe it's required in some things, isn't it?
The
Mm.
OSBI?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I know
But they don't
that,
have to run anything above that, do they?
right.
Yeah.
Isn't it, Deborah, and you probably know better than we do about nurse aid, what they're required. I want to say that that's what the certified nurse aides, the long-term care registry, I think that's what's required by in their law that has to be run. She says yes. So, yeah. I'm not sure who Devers is, and I don't see your face, so I'm not sure. But if you can put in the chat what your the background that you all use, that'd be great.
What about processes? Have you guys had any issues with the process? Like, just the feedback I've heard is getting all the students to get their drug tests done, get them completed, and stuff like that. That process to get them in is been difficult, and that delays some. Like we got an example of one where they couldn't get everything done for this before the semester started due to issues, I call them, but so they postponed it to the following semester for that student. Okay, Deborah says only students over 18, so you must do some high schools too, students. Yeah, that's when you talk with juveniles too. That's I think a guessing deal. Again, guessing. You'd be safe there, but you might also be surprised at how many juveniles we've ran that has been adjudicated as adults based on a crime that they committed, especially on the drug side. So, and that's not, anything I'm going to say violent and stuff like that we've seen has been more the male side of it, even as a police officer. But drugs and stuff, believe it or not, I've seen more females, back, of course, I don't think they do it as much now, but when they were liquefying the Oxycontin and putting it in syringes and shooting it up, there were so many high school kids addicted to that and involved in that, had criminal charges on that actually led to being adjudicated. There was a bunch of them. So, I see the thing of 18 and under, definitely older, it needs to be ran, but it's also a toss up if they're going through the high school and I guess the school pays for the underage high school ones, probably opposed to the students themselves paying for it. So I see that too.
Well, the nurse aid registry doesn't give you an option. It doesn't matter if they're young. It doesn't matter. They require a background check on anyone that's going to sit for the test and be listed on their certification site.
I think that's smart, and I'm familiar with the kind of a lot of the nursing and especially St. Francis. We do, or should I say, did more in the what I call olden days. I've been doing this 23 years, and we were the guys that did the investigations in the hospital, both for St. Francis and St. John's. We did the workers' comp. We did the surveillance on the injured workers that worked there. And we saw a lot of drug activity, a lot of nurses that got caught changing out the Demerol for saline solution and the IV drip, different stuff like that. As well as, even on video surveillance of a literally street deal of selling the patient's pills to a person, and we got it all on video. You know, so it's, I mean, you do see that drugs are a huge issue. A lot of them have those early though. You know,
So Scott, one of the things that you and I've talked about is you trying to be able to speak to the hospitals or the employers themselves.
Yes.
Because it makes a difference, you know, what we do, but if they're not running the checks after they leave our schools, then it's still a really serious problem.
Well, the nurse, like I said, and that's why I refer to the board of nursing, because I know their check covers it. But like nurse aid, some of them I'm not as familiar with exactly. If they go through the OK screen or OK scan, I think it's screen, you know, it eventually leads to the fingerprint process too, which is good. But if they're just required to run OSBI or something like that, then yes, it's a problem, and people are going to slip through those cracks. I mean, it's just the way it's designed. They're going to slip through there. You know, so again, the only way to do it is you got to put a process in place that covers it up front. You know, we were talking about drug testing. They were having an issue with that process. That's an easy correction. On your orientation day, everybody tests. You know, when we go there and we went and tested 40 up there, it took like 36 minutes to do all of them. You know, we just go there and do it. We go to ENEO, we go there and do it, you know, and it's just, it just makes it easier because then they have that same report on the same background check. They have their drug testing result on the same report. So, but it's just a process. If you, you know, a lot of people are resistant to change a process just because it creates difficulties sometimes, but the process is that's the key. If, you know, it's just like these employers, if people find out you don't drug test, who applies for a job there?
Yeah.
Right. And we could track it and see it. I mean, there's employers that they'll do randoms for a year because they're having a problem, and we will eliminate majority of their staff, and then they quit doing randoms because they can't get anyone to work. It's because they have a process in place and they got a reputation of, well, we only do this. And so, you know, I just encourage everybody to do a strong process. And that was my deal with the hospitals. I'd love to get in front of the people that set the standards. I've tried, you know, they think it's a marketing deal, so they don't want to really reply to you. But I'd love to get in front of them and hear what they do and how they do and why they do. And then maybe educate them a little bit or show them some examples, because most people don't know that. I bet you no one here knew that Colorado wasn't included in the national criminal, you know. So, you know, that's one of the things that if it changes there, then every school will change because they're going to have to, right?
Right.
So we've reached out to, you know, the Oklahoma Pharmacy Association, trying to get some leads there. At one point I was listed as their preferred vendor too in Oklahoma, I don't know, 10 years or so ago. So we're trying to get some of the pharmacy boards and some of all the ones, and employers, you know, they get a lot of training from the HR SHRM group. So they're on top of it. They're knowing more and more about it. Now, a lot of them know about it, hadn't changed because they like the simplicity. Well, it's part of my ATS system. I just click a button. I don't have to do nothing.
Right.
So it's kind of, you know, they're risking it for the simplicity.
Right. Well, we've made a contact on our statewide advisory committee with the Oklahoma Hospital Association. The
Mhm.
new executive director is on our advisory committee, and I think that might be an interesting.
Perfect.
That might be a good resource for you to be able to talk. They have a conference every year, and I think it might be interesting for. I mean, I'm guessing, and this is just from the very limited knowledge I have of hospitals, but I'm guessing that a lot of them don't know the information that you've shared with us.
I would bet you're correct on that. Just,
I mean, their
like I
HR
said,
departments, they may know that they have to get a background check, but you know, unless you're staying on top of all these things, there's you know, what states don't offer or don't aren't part of the national database, all those things. Those were things that I never would have dreamed, which just scares me even more.
Yeah, I kind of say it's kind of like ordering a pizza, whether you're Papa John's or Pizza Hut, whatever. Oh, it's a pizza, but you don't know what the ingredients are, right? So it's kind of like a background check. Unless you know it, you don't understand it. But yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to go do a thing in front of their board and say, hey, and just to kind of the same thing. I think I'm going to be presenting this at the state HR deal next year.
Oh, good.
In April, I think. So, but that's on the HR side, but we're
Is
going to
that
be
the
tweaking it
hospital
and
HR?
updating it.
The
Pardon?
hospital, is that the hospital HR?
No, this is well, there may be some there, yes, because it's the National Society of Human Resource Management.
Oh, okay. It's just all HR
Yeah.
professionals.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they'll go there to get their CE credits, because see, like this, the PowerPoint I put on for you guys have actually been approved for CE credits.
Okay.
So
Cool.
they get their continuing education training from this and stuff. And we're going to be updating this one. We're going to be doing one for drug testing and different stuff too. And, getting them ready, because biggest thing I've seen is just educating the people on what they need and what to ask for. Because you can go back to your current vendor. If you love your vendor, go back and say, hey, can you add this stuff to my background? Because it's stuff that's needed. And it's like my old tire analogy. You shouldn't be paying for 4 tires and only receiving 2.
So Christy, do you or Deborah have anything that you'd like, any questions you have specifically or comments you'd like to make?
Not really. My faculty just wanted me to attend because they had seen him at summer conference. So they wanted me just to listen to see if they had told me all about it. So they wanted me to listen.
Awesome.
Oh boy.
So no, that's good. That's good. Yeah. So they want to switch over to what you're using. So
good. Well, here's kind of how I look at it. If most everyone I've seen so far are paying right about the same thing that we charge. Some of them said that they got a discount, that it's a little cheaper. It's not cheaper. It's just what it is. But if you're even close to that, it's night and day difference of what the product is. And it's just, you want to set the standard just like everybody else does,
Right.
And that's why we do what we do. And that's why we do these training deals, is because we believe in educating our clientele. That's why I put stuff on LinkedIn. Every Friday I do Fridays, background tips, and I tell them about whether, California law just changed where you got to do this. Hey, heads up over here on this, or, it's our job to keep you informed and keep you compliant. That's the big deal. Right. And
Right.
so, again, I've been messaged on the back end now by a couple of other companies telling me I shouldn't be telling that stuff. I shouldn't be reporting that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do me, you do you, and we're good. And, but that's just the way it is. I mean, I don't want any one client coming to me going, hey, you didn't tell me Kansas was down.
Right.
We posted on our homepage, we write about it, whatever, because that happens and that does affect your background. And if I can't offer an alternative to that, we got to figure out something, because at the end of the day, we got to check where that person's lived, or
Right.
you could miss them. So it's a process that we've continued to use now for many years. So
Scott, could you put your the name of your company and your website maybe in the chat, and that way it would be it'll show up on the log. We're recording these so that teachers who might not have been able to make it will have the opportunity to go out and listen and look. And so that would be one way that they would be able to find out more information, or the LinkedIn information. I mean, if it's on your website, click here to sign up for the LinkedIn thing, because that's very interesting. And that's the first time I'd heard that. So
yeah, just go to,
we might want to be on that.
Just go in there and like me on LinkedIn. Let's see if
I
did
shared
this thing
your
right.
LinkedIn profile in there.
Yeah, and then this is my cell phone number. Okay, I'm in and out all the time doing drug tests, doing everything. And that's another thing. I'm the owner, but I'm the one that's going to be there doing the drug tests.
Yeah.
I want my people back here doing records. And if you're, if it's over a certain amount, then I take someone with me. Like, we'll go do 80 at NEO in the summer, so there'll be a couple of us go down and do them. But so I work off the cell, so just call me anytime. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to guide you what to say to your current vendor, because I know one thing I found that is amazing to me, though, our industry, background screening industry, especially as it pertains to employers, we don't do contracts, right? We only do service agreements. In other words, a service agreement just says you're going to follow the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And if you don't, it's kind of on you, right? But we live and die by our products. Well, and most other companies are similar to that as far as employment backgrounds. But within the nursing, I've had 3 different groups tell me that they're under contract for like 3 years. And if you recall at one of the events, Laura, when the attorney,
Yeah,
his attorney,
that was conference at Summit in Tulsa
and
last year. Yeah.
she was co-presenting there, and she goes, well, first of all, if you guys are signing any contract like that, stop. Yeah, you don't want to do a unless it's run through the attorneys first, because you need to be able to, if you don't like something we've done or whatever, that none of our clients we don't have contracts with anybody. If you don't like what we're doing, or you want to stop, or we have a lot of small businesses too that sometimes have to worry about their financing and everything too. They could just, if you don't run it, it's a pay as you go thing. There's no setups, no maintenance. So they do it that way. But I was really shocked to see how many contracts were in the nursing side of it.
Very interesting.
Yeah, they're and multiple schools under one contract. Never heard that either.
Multiple schools are under one
Yeah.
contract?
We had one of our junior colleges tell us that they're under some sort of agreement or something with OSU as far as this was just their regular staff people too.
Oh.
Yeah, because we do a few colleges like professors and stuff like that too. We do the background checks on that side of it as well. But yeah, I was kind of shocked that they reached out to us because we did their nursing program and was talking, and they're trying to, they were asking me if their current one covers it, and I'm like, don't, she couldn't even tell me really who it's through a contract with OSU too. So they're all in like a little group or something. So yeah, it was news to us as well, because never heard that. That's another can of liability there. But
well, we certainly appreciate you taking the time today. And I know our turnout isn't great, but my people got to hear you too. And I don't know that they had before, because we're at conference, we're usually zipping around a lot, but we will have this recorded and posted on our YouTube channel that's accessible. If you aren't familiar, Deborah and Christy, or anyone who's listening, you can find that link from CTU, our database that we keep everything in, our learning management system. So Scott, we've got your information out there, and we can't thank you enough for your time, and you keep doing this for us. This is the last we were going to ask you, but thank you so much. We do appreciate it.
You know what? I enjoy doing it. So anything you could think of that's in near my industry, we can assist with. Like I said, between investigations and drug testing and backgrounds, that's what we do. So I'm happy to, like I said, we do this every year. We'll come up with at least one new presentation that's relevant to this stuff. So, I don't care if there's 2 people or 4. I drove all the way to, what is that, Woodward or whatever, right east of Oklahoma City, and there was like 3 people there.
Yeah.
But they had several on the Zoom too, and it doesn't matter to me. I believe in the training of it, because you know, a lot of times that training as a business also does the marketing. When they go back and evaluate what they're currently doing, they scratch their head a little bit and goes, well, that makes no sense.
Right.
You know, so we like to do it. Matter of fact, we're trying to get involved on a more of the other states too. Doing it.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting information.
Yes, it is.
Well, it's ever changing too. So we try to keep you, like I said, LinkedIn and different things. We try to keep you updated with the changing laws and rules, and especially for the different states. And not because we're not just Oklahoma. We got clients all over the United States. So, you know, it's important that they follow those. You know, and important for them to stay compliant too, because you know they get sued quite a bit. So, but any questions, guys? You guys got my cell phone number there. I'm happy to answer anything.
I put the YouTube channel in the link in the chat.
Awesome.
I'm
And
not
then
gonna be
I have-
famous now, am I?
You're what? You
I'm
are
not gonna be
famous.
famous
You
now.
are
am I?
already famous. You have
You
a
are.
big LinkedIn account.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you've seen the messages I get on the back end, you wouldn't call that famous.
I think that's what happens to famous people.
Yeah, I
Infamous.
don't understand it. You know, I wanted to kind of one individual, I wanted to, you know, blast him. I said, I just wanted to say, have you ever heard of ethics? You know, you're selling a product you know doesn't work. Why are you, I mean, you're griping at me for, you know,
And it's a product that can really affect other people's lives.
yeah,
That's
it's,
the thing.
you know, it's like being a police officer and witnessing assault or something and not arresting a person so he can go out and harm other people. You know, it's just not what you do. It's ethics, but we appreciate it. We, like I said, anything we can do to help, just let us know.
Okay, and I'll try and get that name and information to you, but I'd like to make a soft introduction on email first, okay?
Sure. And you might ask them if they're, if on the board, if they would like to hear something like that. Cause I know a few of them, you know, at
Yeah.
St. Francis there, and I know their process and I know kind of how they do it. And I just shake my head, you know,
Yeah.
not, you know, nurses, they go through the nursing one, they go through the ones that the state that are regulated are okay. But then you got all them, you know, from
Everyone. I
I
mean,
call
down
them
to the
cart assistants, you know,
Yeah.
that's pushing the patients to, you know,
exactly
the aides that are
orderlies
in the
and-
rooms,
yeah.
the
There's a lot of
people
people
bringing
with
the
access.
foods. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I worked that district in St. Francis over there during days for about a year and a half, I guess, over there. And, you know, they have a pretty good, you know, one of our old majors is running their security over there. And another one of the officers is kind of the second in command, and they're pretty good at doing their job. And, you know, we've had to go there and make arrests on all these people in the past for theft or something like this, you know. And, you know, so it does happen. And it's amazing when the arrests are made, the background check, you know, when we run them through the police department, they do have priors.
Yeah.
Why'd they hire them to begin with? Well,
Yeah.
my guess is they missed it.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. Well, I learned something every time. Thank you so much, Scott.
No worries. You guys have
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas. Happy holidays.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.